Greetings and welcome. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I am a bass player and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. This is episode 100, and I know that's like a lovely, round, even number, and I figured that if a podcast makes it to episode 100, you should have an extra interesting guest on that episode. So that is the case today on the You Could Be My Aramis podcast. My guest for episode 100 is, and this is going to give me a kick to say, local musician John Scalzi. But that's not all he does. Take a listen. I talk to plenty of musicians on my podcast, most of them from around the country, a few from around the world. But today I get to talk to a musician that lives just a couple of counties over from me. A local fella. So, local musician, how about introducing yourself to the listeners, please?
Hi, my name is John Scalzi. I am on a daily basis not a gigging musician. I'm actually a science fiction writer, but I have a music basement now, and my wife and I have just formed a punk band called WEMA. It's OEMAA. And we have our first single out on Spotify now. In addition to that, I also have a couple of electronic albums that are also available on the various streaming services.
You do. So I want to talk about how long have you been playing music? Like, how long has this been part of your life?
Well, I've been playing music actually since high school. My first instrument is actually drums. When I was in high school. And by the way, this will be classic for me. I wanted to do something but in music, but I was also incredibly lazy and did not want to learn how to read music because that just seemed unfair. So I was like, drums are just hitting things. And then I don't need to learn to read music at all, which is false, by the way. There is actual drum music notation. But so I started carrying around drumsticks and hitting things and, learning how to do it. And for my 16th or 17th birthday, I can't remember which, all my friends got together and bought me an actual drum set and were like, okay, you've been hitting walls and pillows for too long. Now is your time to actually learn how to play an instrument. So I played drums. I played drums in my high school rock band called Dead Rats Don't Fly, which if you go look for Dead Rats Don't Fly or DRDF on YouTube, you will find a cut from us. It's terrible, and you can hear me clacking my drumsticks as I'm trying to play the drums, but that doesn't matter. That's, it's still there. And then I also played drums in college for musicals and so on and so forth. And then I stopped doing music entirely for about almost 10 years, simply because, I was busy developing my career as a writer and just didn't have a lot of time to do it. And I eventually got back into it in the early part of the 2000s, one through playing with samples and loops through Acid, which was the big DAW at the time. And then since then, just picking up various instruments and trying to play them. I don't really classify myself as the world's most competent musician, but I make up for lack of talent with enthusiasm and the ability to understand how a computer works.
Those are useful. And John, I cannot tell you how in demand drummers are. So if you wanted to come out of drumming retirement, you would get so many offers to play with people in Dayton. It would be insane.
Yeah. No, that would actually require me to kind of intensively get back on the bicycle, if you know what I mean. It's the thing of like I still have the trap set that my friends gave me back in the day. But I also have an electronic drum set because I have cats and I don't want to scare them. And the great thing about the electronic drum set is, one, you can just sort of tailor it for whatever you want to do. But the other thing is that it is really, really good for letting you know just how off the beat you are and how much you need to get some more practice in before you can actually do it in front of actual live humans. So, but yeah, no, I've thought about it because I've experienced that where people are like, wait, you play drums? Oh, you should definitely join our band. And I'm like, you don't know what you're saying. And they're like, oh, we don't care. You know, can you do 4/4? Can you like more or less keep a beat? Fine.
They're the hardest part of a band to find, always.
Rhythm is, I think, the hardest part. I mean, I think that a good drummer is hard to find. A good bassist is hard to find. The ones who basically stay in the pocket and don't, kind of wander about. A good rhythm section. There's that old saying: you don't hear a good rhythm section until it stops.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's very much that thing. The coolest thing actually is that my wife, Christine, who is now in WEMA with me, has picked up the bass, and so we are kind of a natural rhythm section there, which is delightful to me.
That's pretty cool. As a bass player, I appreciate drummers that are decent. I like playing with them, and you definitely do establish a relationship as a rhythm section in the band. You've already got one with your bass player, so that's pretty convenient.
Right. Well, and also, both of us are forgiving of the other when we, and it's been a learning experience because she's only been playing the bass for about a year. What had happened was over the pandemic, I decided that I was finally going to bite the bullet and like build a music studio at home because it was the pandemic and I had time. And so I just bought a regular Squire bass, right? So that I could just have one around if I needed to use it. And she picked it up and she's like, "Oh, I like this." Because my wife is 5'10", Amazon, so it basically fit her scale of living. But I'm right-handed and she's left-handed. So she's like, well, so I didn't need to be told twice. I immediately, went out and got Ibanez, left-handed bass for her. And it's just been the two things. She was excited about it and she's been, working to improve on it. But literally everybody else we know, both in real life and, on in the social media, is just thrilled that, my wife has all of a sudden become a bassist because they're like, the bassists are all the cool people and you're cool already. So you are going to be super cool. And Chrissy's just like, I just need to learn how to hit the, boom, 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 boom in rhythm. So these are the things that we're working on. Yes, she is super cool. Yes, she plays the bass. She has a while to go before she can be a super cool bassist. But that's the whole point. That's why we're playing punk in WEMA, because it's a good place to start. It's like, what kind of genre of music do you play when you play your instruments terribly? Punk, because you're not graded on precision.
You're not
when you're playing punk.
So how long have you been playing guitar? You started on drums, and since I do my internet research, I've gathered that you also know how to play ukulele. So when did you move over to string instruments?
Well, I had a guitar since college, and I did the thing of learning like 7 chords, and then for 15 years, that was what I knew on the guitar. And then, of course, like I said, went away from it simply because I didn't have time. And then I came back to it and I was terrible. And I was like, why am I so bad at a thing that I was at least, I could strum the guitar before, and now I was just fumble fingers. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start smaller. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get myself a ukulele for 2 reasons. One, 4 strings. It's only 66% as difficult as a guitar. Right. It's just plain math. But the other thing is the ukulele is an extremely, extremely forgiving instrument. So even when you hit a bum note, it still sounds sort of twee. Right. So you can get away with a lot more sloppiness on a ukulele than you can on a guitar. So I was playing with the ukulele for a while. I wanted a slightly larger instrument, so I got a tenor guitar that I had strung like a ukulele, with the strings, and I played that for a while. And the thing that you eventually learn is that 4 strings is great, but it's also limiting, right? And then that's when I came back to the guitar. Now I have more guitars than I deserve to have. Right. So behind me right now, you can't really see it, but I have an Acoustasonic Telecaster. I've got a limited edition Gibson over here that's just all black. simply because, it just looked very goth. I have a Zager acoustic, it's a beautiful acoustic. And the way that the Zager brand does it is that they have the height of the strings is actually really low. So it's closer to an electric guitar height for the strings than it is for an acoustic, which is great if you're trying to do bar chords. And then I have a Bluebird tenor guitar. And then I have a whole bunch of weird guitars from Eastwood, right? So like, for example, I have a Warren Ellis combination tenor guitar and electric mandolin as a two-necked guitar, which is really funky looking because it looks like it's a shrunken guitar on top of a only slightly larger guitar. And people are like, what on earth is that? And I got it because I wanted to have both. And then I also have a Mandocello from them, which is an 8-string guitar as well. And that's kind of fun to play. And then, of course, I have the Beast.
Yes, I was gonna get to that because, well, like, all right, so I've been playing bass a long time, and I didn't have a second bass until last month. And my reasoning for that has always been, well, this one plays and records just fine. I maintain it, and I can only play one at a time. And I got to the point where I need to repair my bass. But I'm in multiple music projects in between gigging and recording and practice. I could not have one. So I was like, this is time. Sure. Now I need a second bass. The Beast, you have more instruments than I've had in 25 years in one contraption. So I just want to hear, how do you explain that thing to people?
So for context, for the people who don't know what the Beast is, although you can just go to Google and type in Scalzi the Beast and it will show it to you. It is a 6-necked guitar. And the guitar necks are in order a 12-string, 6-string with a Floyd Rose. It's a 4-neck bass, or 4-string bass, a 5-string bass, a 7-string guitar for when you really want to do the heavy metal, and then another 6-string, which I've had strung as a baritone. So each neck is individually different. And what had happened was, while I was doing my music basement, this thing went up for auction. I read it in like Guitar World or something like that. And I looked at it and it was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous to look at. It's ridiculous to hold. It's 37 pounds. Ooh. You can't really play it because it's all 6 necks. You could play maybe the 12-string and the 6-string, and everything else is, the only way that you can actually play it is to put it up and play it from behind like a harp or something like that. But I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? That would be a great centerpiece for the music room, right? Like, it's functional, barely functional, but as a conversation piece, it's brilliant. So I went ahead and I put a bid on it, and I didn't expect to win the bid because there's a history of this. It's been played by Bill Bailey. It's been played by Prince Charles. It was in a museum. It was the sort of thing that I assumed someone else would actually like bid on it. But no one did bid on it. And then I ended up winning it. And I remember talking to Chrissy about it. I was like, I'm buying it as art. Just so you know, as a guitar, it's ridiculous. As art, it's not so bad. But then when I won it, I actually had to have it shipped because it was in the UK. And the shipping for that, as you might imagine, was kind of ridiculous, almost as much as the guitar itself.
Yeah.
Because I got in contact with the auction house. I'm like, how are we going to ship this? And they're like, we're not shipping it. You need to talk to a specialized shipper. And they recommended a specialized shipper. I went and talked to them, and they're like, we can't do that. You need an even more specialized shipper than that. And fortunately, the second shipper was like, oh, yes, we can absolutely do that. And they, set it up, but we had to create a crate. We had to create a special, environment for it to travel across the ocean. And this is the only one time where being a science fiction author worked to my advantage for anything. Because while I was talking to my representative about how it's being created and getting the bill of lading and all that sort of stuff, they were finally, it's like, everything's done. Here's where it's going. Here's how it's being shipped. Here's when it should arrive. Here's what to do if there are any issues, and blah, 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 blah. So everything is good. Also, by the way, Red Shirts and Lock-In are two of my favorite novels. And I'm like, woohoo! woo. So I know that, this thing may actually arrive in one piece because the person who's shipping it is an actual fan.
Useful.
So useful, absolutely useful. So yes, then it arrived, and I took it to my local music store, Bach to Rock, over here in Greenville, for them to basically make sure it was okay and to put new strings on it and all that sort of stuff. And I walked through the door, and they're like, "Why? What have you done? Why are you bringing this to our doorstep?" And then I gave it to them, and then afterwards, when I came to pick it up, the guy who serviced it was, "This is amazing, and there's no way that I would have designed it like this." Because, for example, all the necks are active at one time, right?
Oh, no.
Right. Yeah. No. It's ridiculous. And so if you want to play it, you basically have to mute all the other necks in order to play one of them. The guy who created it, a guy named Hutchins, basically did it again more for the art rather than for the playability. And no one told him not to make all the necks playable at one time. So the way that I explain it to people is, yes, you can play any of the necks. You can play all of them, but you would have to have a good excuse to do it. Like, I could play the bass on the Beast, but it would be easier just to play the bass on my Squire, right? I could play the guitar, any of the guitars on that, but if I actually want a good sound, then I will play, one of my actual single-use guitars. It's it's a stunt guitar. It was purchased with the acknowledgement that it was going to be a stunt guitar, and that, quite frankly, I was buying it as a piece of art. Now, ironically, I recently bought a church, and so
the guitar is no longer the weirdest thing you've bought.
No, it took some doing, but we managed to do it. But now that I have a whole church, the Beast is going to go live at the church eventually, and it's going to be on the altar, because of course it will be, right?
Of course it would be. Are you thinking about turning the church into a part-time music venue, perhaps, or have you not decided what to do with it yet?
This is one of the things that we were thinking about. Like, the reason we bought a church was not to start a religion or anything like that, because generally speaking, science fiction authors starting religions is a bad idea.
Very bad idea.
Very bad idea. But the thing was, we were looking for office space for, things that we wanted to do. And where we live, I live in a small rural town called Bradford. There wasn't a lot of office space to be had. And so we were actually just thinking of, like, we'll buy a plot of land and build something on it. And I went on to Zillow to look for land, and the church building had come up for sale just that day. And it was perfect for what we needed. Now, the benefit is that we have that, sanctuary area with the altar and with great acoustics and stuff like that. And so we will probably do events of some sort or another. One of the things that it's primarily going to be used as an office for us. And also, if we have friends come to visit, we can put them up at the church, or, things like that. But I would hate for a building that was so much part of the local community. People went to church there, they got married there, they had memorial services there, they went to Sunday school there. I would hate for it to be permanently closed off from everybody in town. So in theory, once we get the whole thing completely renovated, maybe once every couple of months we'll be like, hey, we're going to bring in musicians, or we'll bring in someone to do a lecture or something like that. And it will be open to the community, so that, we're not going to, charge people. We're just going to be like, hey, if you want to come see this person do bluegrass music or whatever, come in Wednesday night and have them do that. And I think that that's actually kind of a cool way to do it. Are we going to turn it into a dedicated music venue? I don't know. That seems like work. And and at the end of the day, it's meant, again, to be our offices for various business stuff that we have to do. But every once in a while, sure, why not? That could be, again, something that keeps the building as an active part of the community, which I think is a good idea.
There's something charming about music in old buildings, and I'm thinking about, in your direction over in Troy, the Hamer House will have shows every now and then. Mm-hmm. Really old buildings, been in the community forever, and it's just a really charming, quaint place to see a show, and they have a beautiful piano up there upstairs in their music room. And I really wish they would do it more often. There's not too many music events that I would drive from where I live to Troy for. It's, about 30-40 minute trip. But
Sure.
anytime musicians that I personally know from Dayton get invited to play one of those quiet acoustic sessions at Hamer House, I'm in, because it's just a cool venue and it sounds good, and it's a cool community building kind of thing. And speaking of community, you're pretty well known in your community, and you mentioned the town you live in. So, dear listeners, John keeps mentioning he's a science fiction author. He's one of the really popular ones. If you don't read science fiction, you might not know this. Aren't you a little concerned that, because there's crazy people that they'll come find you? I mean, you're not exactly hiding from anyone.
There was one point where somebody, like at the height of some obnoxious thing that was going on several years ago, someone sent me an email and they said, I'm going to dox you. I'm going to tell everybody what your address is. And I'm like, my dude, I am in the phone book, right?
Yep.
Like literally, I haven't been hiding. The thing is that where I live, it's kind of hard to sneak up on me. I have 5 acres of land. I will see you coming up the driveway, and I have a clear field of fire, right? So if I really think you're a problem, then it's, I have a hunting bow, and I'm perfectly happy to use it. I'm a reasonably good shot with the bow. People are like, do you have guns? And I'm like, I have a bow. Why not?
It's an acoustic gun.
It's an acoustic gun, right? It's boom, key of C. No, but the thing about it is that, my physical location has been known for a very long time. I've only had ever like 2 people come to the house and be like, and both of them were aspiring authors wanting to, have tips. And I'm like, one, don't ever do that. Don't come to somebody's house and be like, hey, can you give me tips? But in both the cases, it was very clear pretty quickly that these people weren't there to murder me. And so that was not too much of the problem. But, everybody in the community knows who I am. Everybody in the community knows what I do. My neighbors are all lovely people, and they're all heavily armed. Right. And anytime it's like there's a truck or a car that it's a house and we're not there, and they'll immediately call us up and be like, hey, do you know somebody's at your house? My next door neighbor is a sheriff. So, I mean, you really have to want to come get me to come get me. It's much easier for people just to yell at me or make snide remarks on social media.
Also, a whole lot less effort, I believe.
Yeah. So much less effort. I mean, this is the other thing. I don't want to encourage people. It's not a dare, go ahead and make the effort, kids. Please don't. But by and large, like I said, where I live and what I do has been known literally for like 3 decades. So, and so far, not so much of an issue. Now, it also helps that, I'm middle-aged white dude. I'm not generally the sort of person that gets stalked or has a lot of danger, and I acknowledge that that's some of the aspect of it as well. It's easy for me to be like, people know where I live, because on the grand scale of people who get stalked or something like that, it's fairly low. I have been stalked. I have legitimately had to file a police report against someone, but that was a very very specific thing. And it was, in fact, the husband of the person who was stalking me was like, please file a police report, because that way we have a paper trail that we can convince her to go back on her medication. So, that was the story of my stalking.
It's funny, but it's not funny. Like, I laugh.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny now. At the time, it was like, it's like, this is a person who actually needs medical intervention and is not going to get it until someone calls the police on her. Would you do it if she bothers you again? And I was like, yeah, I will.
I hope that this person got the help that they needed. Now it is time for the 2 questions I ask everyone who comes on this podcast. Okay. We're going to put you in the back to the past machine, which I don't think you've gone there so far in your books.
Okay.
What is the first song that you can remember hearing in your life? Like as far back, like toddler age, what's the first song that you can remember?
The very first song that I know that I heard was probably Mercedes Benz by Janis Joplin, because my mother was a huge, huge Janis Joplin fan. And also, when she was young, she actually looked quite a bit like Janis Joplin. So whenever I saw the cover for Pearl, which was Janis Joplin's last album, I always assumed that was just a picture of my mom in, on the album. So for when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I just assumed that was my mom singing. So, but that is the song I know that I heard most. Probably after that, the one that registered on me was "Country Roads" by John Denver.
Nice. A related question.
Mm-hmm.
What did your childhood smell like?
What did my childhood smell like? It smelled like St. Bernard's, because around this, the same time that we had the that my mother was confusing me with the Pearl LP cover. We had 3 large St. Bernard dogs. I mean, so much larger than me or my sister, because we were like 5 and 7 at the time. And so when you have 3 large St. Bernards, your house is going to smell like dog. There's not much you can do about it. It's not unpleasant. It was not like, the dogs were full of horrible stank or anything like that, but they smelled like dog. So that was the particular note that I remember.
I like that. All right, and I only really have two more questions. The first one is one that I hate when people ask me, so I'm going to do it to you. It's just,
oh boy.
All right, I read a lot of, as a musician and someone who loves music, I read a lot of music blogs, and so many interviewers always ask, so what's next for you? And I don't like that question, but I like to ask it just as a nod to the cliche. So not you, writer you, but you, multiple instrument playing musician and half of We Ma You. What's next?
Well, we put out the single by Wema, Parking Space. And we are now thinking about what other songs we want to do as a group, committing to the conceit of WEMA, which stands for overly entitled middle-aged a-holes. And so all the songs are from the point of view of obnoxiously entitled folks who are in a furious rage about really, really minor things, like parking spaces, about someone taking your parking space at like Whole Foods or Dorothy Lane. So we're probably going to do at least an EP of songs that sticks to that, conceit, a concept EP. Depending, we might even get a whole LP out of that. But it's punk songs, so, and no matter what, we're going to be out the door at 25 minutes.
Yep.
We'll do that. I have also done but I've had 2 albums of electronic music, so I'll probably continue to do a little bit more electronic music. And although WEMA is fun and it's good to have a project with your spouse, I may try to do some more ambitious music at some point. Also, like where I actually sing and stuff like that, which is always going to be a treat. So
yeah. That means that once you get the next thing off, if you have the time to do this again, I'll get nerdy into your songwriting process.
Sure.
And I'm sure there are some similarities between songwriting and writing. As far as you actually have to write something, but one of them's got instruments involved. Where can I send people if they want to get to know you better or follow you on the internet? Where should I send people?
Literally, there's the blog, which I've had up for 25 years, which is at scalzi.com. So lastname.com, you'll take you right to it. Or type whatever into Google and it will also take you there. The other thing is I'm on a bunch of social media. I'm either Scalzi or J Scalzi. So Scalzi at Twitter and J Scalzi at like Instagram. So that's basically where I'm not hard to find. I'm literally online all the time and should be doing other things with my time than spending as much time as I do on social media. But here we are.
Shouldn't we all, though?
Shouldn't we all? Yes, it is an attractive nuisance and getting more so as we go along.
Well, thank you, John, for taking time away from being online and from your cats, one of which I see in the background there. Thank you for taking that time to talk with me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled that I get to talk about my music.
First, I'd like to thank very much John Scalzi for being willing and being a good sport and talking more about his music than what he's generally known for. Thank you, dear listeners. If perchance you have listened to all 100 of these, wow, that's a lot of work. I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully you've been interested in some of the people I've talked to, and I just want to keep introducing you to interesting folks. Our next episode, well, another talented musician will be here to have a chat. Come on back. Thanks.